till they kind of edged it out.
Bossier City headed on to Denver. And you talked a lot about that Denver defense, and they held Bossier City to only 7 points. You said Johnny Pickler's going to have to keep it clean. He did not. Denver advances. They're on to the quarterfinals, 13-7 victory.
Yeah, 4 turnovers by Johnny Pickler in key moments was a killer for Bossier City. And Denver with that tough defense. It was almost a shutout.
Yeah.
Bossier City scored really late to kind of make it a game.
They did. Then we moved on to Sunday and had 2 games. It was all that was played. But those 2 games, the away team won both of them. Heard a lot of talk about, just pick all the home teams to win. That's what you did in your picks.
That is what I did.
And you know what? The 2 away teams, Fort Worth, not only did they get a win, they got one heck of a win, 41-27. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that game later on, but they came from way behind early on to get a dominating win. And Minnesota 27-16 over Carolina, really kind of sticking it to them and showing that Minnesota is still Minnesota.
Don't pick Carolina again.
Well, you can't because not till season 25,
yes.
And then you can make the same mistakes all over again. So, all right, that was last week. Now we've got the quarterfinals. Let's see the schedule that we've got for this weekend. It's 4 more excellent games at 6:30 tonight. In just a little bit, we've got Minnesota at Baltimore. Colin and Rick Northrup on the call. Can't wait for that one. And then after that at 9 p.m., Denver at Vancouver. Michael Cirillo and Mike O'Neill. 2 fantastic crews, 2 fantastic games tonight.
Yeah, and look, I'm interested to see both these teams because Minnesota kind of had a little bit of resurgence last week. They kind of looked like more like the team we know, and Denver with that tough defense playing against one of the best offenses in the league.
Yeah, we'll break both of those games down. We'll also break down these next 2 on Sunday, 6:30 p.m. We've got Albuquerque hitting the road again. They're back in Mexico City where they were just a couple weeks ago. Chad Rowland, Eric Vincent on the call, and Fort Worth. They're gonna be on the road presumably all playoffs long if they keep on winning. But they're in Washington against the number 1 seed. Chris Curtis, Mark Lopez on the call. 2 more fantastic crews. Can't wait for those games too tomorrow.
And I feel like Fort Worth is taking the Bulls on parade per se. The Toros.
There you go.
They got to do it. They got to make the parade over to the West Coast and play Washington.
Washington, number 1 seed. They're in great position to find success the rest of the way as well as they have all season. So let's look at the playoff bracket. There's no more reseeding. So how the bracket sits now is how it'll sit the rest of the way through. What does that mean? It means the winner of Denver-Vancouver will face the winner of Fort Worth-Washington, and the winner of Albuquerque-Mexico City will face Minnesota and Baltimore. So those are your potential semifinal matchups. It'll be one of those 4 teams versus one of the other 4 teams. And then, of course, the championship to follow after that.
Yeah, and look, and it's going to be – I think these games are a lot better than what we've seen in the past. These 4 games are going to be a lot better than what we've seen in past season. Usually this round is kind of it ends up being kind of blowouts.
Yeah.
I don't think every game here can be considered to potentially be a blowout.
Well, I don't think they're necessarily going to be blowouts either. You never know. Something might end up surprising us, but – all 8 of these teams could compete for that championship. All of them have deserved their spot. They've earned their spot to get here, and they've all got a shot to advance on to that championship and ultimately get it. So let's jump right into these game breakdowns and start talking about what we have to look forward to over the course of the weekend. We'll go like we used to in reverse order. We'll go with the farthest game away and work our way back towards the closest
madness.
game.
It's going to be madness.
I know. All right, so Fort Worth at Washington. That's our 9 p.m. Sunday game. Fort Worth, like I said, they had a convincing win over Houston in the wild card round. They fell behind early. They were down 24-7 early in the second quarter before Kate Stevens, the legend, would flip the game on its head with a 101-yard kick return touchdown. That would be the start of 27 unanswered points before Houston would finally get a field goal in the final 2 minutes to bring it back within 1 score. But then Fort Worth ultimately would prove what many doubted. They would take down a tough team on the road. And that's what they're going to have to do again if they want to advance on to the semifinals. The Washington Trident, division winners at 10-2, number 2 in points scored, number 6 in points allowed, number 3 point differential. They are playing incredible football. Statistically, they outmatch Fort Worth in nearly every measurable category. These teams did meet back in Week 11 at the Stockyards in Texas. One of Washington's only 2 losses on the season was realized that day. Fort Worth got the win, barely, 14-12, and that was at home. Now we're in the quarterfinals. Washington's playing host. Fort Worth's got to hit the road. Talk about those Toros.
And like I mentioned before, right, they're actually starting to take the Bulls on their own parade, right? Yep. And they had a comeback win on the road, as you just mentioned. With them being down significantly early on in the game. Cade Stevens changed it. We all talk about a specific moment in the game where that changed.
That game was all Houston until Cade Stevens.
Cade Stevens ran around, gave them that little bit of momentum that they needed, and they just carried it on, right? And they went on, like you mentioned, they went on to outscore Houston 27-3 for the rest of the game. After that, to their win, they put another 41 points on top of what they already did to Houston early on in the season.
Yes.
Look, and as we've seen offensively, they started out extremely slow. But they finished the last 3 quarters of that game really, really strong. Quarterback Eric Price on the day, he threw 3 touchdowns, 1 interception for 272 yards. And this is a player, that he was throwing the ball to last week that was like missing. The guy had 20 catches all season long. What's he do? The Cowboy, Robert Garrett Jr., comes in there alive. 6 catches yesterday. He had a quarter of what he had all season in one game.
Hey, listen, he's getting up there in age. They're just saving him for the playoffs.
I guess he's like,
Cowboy is back.
It just sandbagging. He's like, look, man, I'm gonna come out when I need it. Look, and Hacker, contributed as well with another 6 receptions and had a touchdown. Wide receiver Henry McGee had a really
good, huh?
Oh yeah, he's good and he's fast. He had that big long play right that got him on the board early, and he had 4 receptions for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. He contributed not just 1 but 2 on the season. The run game was not great, but the passing game was able to hold down the fort and actually lift them up to where they needed to be for them to be, to get to where they were to put up 41 points.
And the defense, you talked about the rough first quarter, of course, but the defense really held down the fort as well. They had a great game.
Yeah, and they only allowed 22% of the first downs to be converted on third downs for Houston, which was really good. And the quarterback pressure was good as well. He had 3 sacks. And this is another crazy stat. This guy played for Louisiana. He holds the single-season record for sacks in Louisiana before we decided to disappear. Luther Gahn had 0 sacks on the season. He came in yesterday with 2. Not yesterday, last week with 2 sacks on the season. It's like, where'd he come from? He's just kind of been missing all season long. Garrett Jr. decided to show up. He's like, I'm going to show up too. So guess what? That's what we got right there. So he was able to get that in, and they were also able to clog the passing lanes. They had 8 pass defenses as well. Delaney Nash, 14 tackles last week and was all over the field. They will need a similar performance as they play Washington.
Yeah, and Washington, they're at 10-2, right? And they're going to be facing one of the teams, like I talked about, it's one of the 2 teams that beat them earlier in the season. That game was on the road. They're back home. Talk about Washington.
Yeah, and they only lost but 2 points on the road, like you mentioned before. They have the number 2 scoring offense. They're also number 7 in pass and rushing offense as well. And that gives them the number 3 total offense in the entire league. Very, very balanced offense, in my opinion, with a guy who played in Louisiana, quarterback Tommy Utah, who is top 10 in all quarterback categories, right?
Is.
And it's along with having a 2-headed rushing attack of running backs in Shape Cobb and Christopher Dean, who I think is really underrated, right? It's kind of like a bruiser type back. He's a fullback or whatever, and they combined together for over 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns on the season. Dean himself contributed 10 of those touchdowns for this team as well. So, look, and then you look at the receiving core that they have and the people who catches passes. The tight end Mahata and also Terrell Cooper, you call him Coop, right, coming in there, are the team's best pass catchers. And as a group collectively, the whole core, not just those 2, averaging 15 yards per reception. And it's one of the good things that, hey, look, when they're making the catches, they're down the field, right? So they are a very tough offense to slow down, and we're going to see how they're going to face out, offensively against Fort Worth.
Yeah, we've seen them play a few different ways this season. Sometimes they come out very pass-heavy. Sometimes they're a little bit more balanced. I'm interested to see what approach they take against Fort Worth. Listen, they've seen it all. They have the number 1 strength of schedule out of any team this season. They know how to play football, and they're gonna be ready to compete. But Fort Worth's offense is going to have to try to to beat a rather good defense, but on paper, maybe it doesn't look that way. You talk about the defense.
Yeah, but they're pretty darn good,
they are
right?
Pretty darn good.
I mean, you don't get 10-2 for just kind of being bad, right? Look, they allow
you got to have a good defense to get 10-2.
Exactly, and they allow the 6th fewest points in the league, with also having the number 2 rush defense.
Yeah.
They're 3rd best in takeaways. They've taken away 26 times from their opponent over the season. They are 4th best in sacks. They have 26 of those. And it's led by defensive end Ronnie Panani, who actually has 8 sacks on the season. Used to be a former linebacker turned defensive end, so he's got the speed to do what he wants, and he's also ranked 5th in the SFL with those 8 sacks. The defense is best in the league in pass. It's in pass defenses with 69. Harish is going to love that. 69 pass defenses, and have contributed 4 touchdowns on the season as well.
Yep.
Their front 4 with Panani, McNeely, Howard, and Tina Begin are arguably the best, up front as far as getting sacks, because they account for 22 of those 26 sacks on the season that they have. Right, they force opposing offenses in tough situations and capitalize on the opportunities that they're given. But they're playing Fort Worth, and we know Fort Worth knows how to play teams tough.
They do.
They've done it all season long.
They've been great
play
on the
to
road,
the
too.
level of their opponent, and this is where they can actually start making a lot more noise if they take down Washington.
Yeah, and you mentioned that throughout the season, as we've covered Fort Worth, is that they play to the level of the opponent. Well, this is the number 1 seed, so if you're going to play to the level of your opponent, this would be the week to step up. Listen, looking forward to it. You mentioned so many great players, and one of the things that we get the honor of doing on the show tonight is to reveal the all-star roster and tell you which players got in. And that's pretty much it. Which players got in?
Yeah, so we're not naming the players that got out because there's way too many.
But not yet. Not yet. Let's break down another game. Let's talk about the other game on Sunday. Albuquerque at Mexico City, a rematch from just a couple weeks ago. Albuquerque was on their way to winning the division title in the South in their first season there. They were up top of the South most of the season, but then Mexico City stood in their way. The Aztecs would prove to be up to the challenge. They held Albuquerque to only 10 points while putting up 27 of their own. And Albuquerque lost the next week in Fort Worth, who played to the level of their opponent again. That would knock them down even further, having Albuquerque actually end 3rd in the division and sending them to the wild card round. Obviously, we talked about it. Albuquerque hosted Sin City last week. They dominated defensively. They held Sin City to only 3 points. They do have a tougher task this week. They're back on the road. They're not in the comforts of Albuquerque anymore. You're down south of the border now. They've only won twice while on the road all season long. Mexico City, meanwhile, remains undefeated at home. In fact, they haven't lost in Estadio Matt Willson since facing Canton back in Week 7 of last season. So it's a tough place to play for any team in Albuquerque. They just came fresh off of ultimately a 3-score loss in Mexico City. What do they got to do to win this week?
Albuquerque last week, I think they escaped with a win. In my opinion, like the way the game went. Right, look, their offense was not impressive at all at home last week, and they were relatively, but they were mistake-free for the most part, right? Look, and they were just, they just could not, in my opinion, fully capitalize still them being mistake-free on the 3 turnovers that they were actually got, right? They just couldn't put it all together, but they didn't play bad. It might sound like that I'm telling you that they played bad, but they didn't play
good,
bad at all.
They didn't play like Albuquerque normally plays at home.
Right, and they usually capitalize on things like that, right? But I just expected, given the opportunity that they were given, they would have done a lot more with it.
Sure.
Right? The rush offense had a good average, right? They averaged, just over 5 yards a carry, but they lacked the knockout punch, in my opinion. And Kay Marion, we know she's were the best wide receiver in terms of catches and yards and all that good stuff. She only had 3 receptions, and it severely slowed down the offense. It was unreal, and we talked about it. She was one that they had to stop, and they, for the most part, did, but they just couldn't do any more than that, but they were able to get there. And it seems odd because on 3rd down, they were 70% conversion on 3rd down last week. And you think they would put up a lot more points, but they didn't, right? And this game was only 7-3 in the 4th quarter. Look, and this week, in my opinion, going and playing Mexico City, you guys are going to have a better offensive output this week. They got to correct a lot of those mistakes that they had last week.
Yeah, and the defense, like I talked about a minute ago, that's really what won the game for them. They held Sin City to only 3 points. So if you hold your opponent to 3, I always tell Ramos, hold them to 0. I'll at least net us a field goal. It's all I need you to do. He always ends up allowing a few points here and there, but they held him at only 3.
Yeah, and because the offense was seemingly stuck in mud, but the defense stood up and did what they had to do. 3 turnovers they forced. Neil Rivers, defensive tackle Neil Rivers, had a phenomenal game.
If we did have time for a player spotlight, Neil Rivers is the guy.
He would have been it.
Yep.
What he had 2 sacks, and the big man got an interception. That interception, I believe he caught it, was inside their own 10-yard line right there when the opponent was driving to score.
It saved them points.
So look, and they were the stereotypical bend don't break defense the entire game, and the offense mustered just enough points for them to secure the victory. Look, and now this week against you guys, they're going to need to stand tall as they face one of the most balanced and complete offenses that the league has seen over the last couple of seasons, right? So you guys are the champs, right? You're the champs until somebody says otherwise. And I do think for them, their key players this week for them to be effective will be getting K. Marion back involved and getting Jason Williams in the running back position, get that running game going to set up passes thrown to K. Marion. And the defensive line with Porter, Jefferson, Rivers, and Josh Williams are going to have to shut down anything that Jordan Sipe wants to do and everything else, and then hold that running game as well with what you got in the backfield, Ray Bentley, and who else you want to give the ball to. I think it's important for them to get those guys involved and actually put it all together.
And Jack Wall, I've got my eyes on Jack Wall as well on offense. We got to make sure we slow him down. Listen, I'm not gonna toot my own horn. I'm not gonna talk about Mexico City. Take it. Offense, defense. What do we got going on?
And you guys beat Albuquerque in Week 14 not that long ago, 27-10, like you said. And here you are. You're back. You guys backed into the South Division title, losing 2 of the last 3 games.
We claimed the South Division title. I don't know if we won the South Division title, but we do have it.
But still, impressively, you guys still boast one of the best offenses that you have, the number 4 offense total, along with being number 3 in points scored at home. You guys score 32 points at home, which is really impressive.
Points, man.
Well, you need them to win, right?
So at least 3.
While also having the second fewest turnovers in the SFL. Now, quarterback Jordan Sipe, in my opinion, has silently been among the SFL's best quarterbacks. I don't think anybody even realizes he's there. He's a short guy. Larry Love gets all the love coming in late in games, driving blimps or whatever you want to call it. Look, he is number 2 in completion percentage, number 7 in touchdowns, the fewest interceptions in the league. So he's number 1 in that category and number 1 in QBR. Not to mention, he's number 3 in completions and 6th best in passing yards. And let's not forget the guy has some wheels on him as well.
He does have wheels.
He's run for over 200 yards on the ground. It's an amazing thing. And this guy, if he isn't an all-star, which we're going to find out a little bit later, we're going to find out he's the guy that deserves an all-star, and he's a big part of why they had the success. Look, he has plenty of weapons as well. We already know he throws a lot to Noe Terrazas. You know these people. Tight end Bill Henry as well. 60-plus catches each, right? With Terrazas leading the league in touchdowns. It's crazy. I think about it. I have to replay this in my mind. Look, and all and all that, we haven't even mentioned Hall of Fame running back Ray Bentley, who has over 800 yards rushing. This is an extremely talented offense and a tough one to stop.
Oh, we're stacked. We're stacked on offense. You know who else is stacked? The defense. There's all sorts of playmakers there.
Yeah, look, and you guys only surrender 15 points a game. Second best in the SFL as a defense. Look, and as far as taking the ball away from the opponent, you guys are particularly good. You guys, look at the Cyrus Drive, and last time you forced 4 interceptions from us in the last game you guys played, right? You guys have ball hawking DBs with Brody, Ryan, Itera, Dags, and Max Jackson, who actually have Jeffrey and Max Jackson are Hall of Famers, right? And they're also playing with one of they're the best at playing the line of scrimmage, with having a defense who has 99 tackles for losses on the season as well. But that's not the only knock I have on this defense, right? You guys don't pressure the quarterback very well at all. You guys only have 13
it's been a
sacks.
struggle this season.
13 sacks on the season, which is 5th worst in the SFL. But to this point in the progression of where you guys going, it hasn't been an issue. So you never know what's going to happen. But the key players here, Sipe, keep up the good stuff.
Good.
Tight end with Bill Henry and wide receiver Noah Terrell's doing it. And I think Max Jackson, his ability to knock the ball out, and he plays a lot of scrimmages with the best of them. I think he can be a game changer right there.
I agree, and it's going to be a great game. Can't wait for Sunday. Both of those games are going to be good. All-star reveal?
I guess.
Nah, not yet. We'll do one more game first. Now, maybe we'll do two more. We'll see. Well, all right. Let's talk about Denver at Vancouver. We got to keep them guessing.
Yeah, we do.
Remember when we did the convention reveal?
Oh, they hated it.
Oh, yeah.
That was so – they were being mean.
Yeah, but we liked it, though. I don't know.
That's all good.
Yeah, we're a little weird.
Made me feel good.
Yeah, it's fine. Denver at Vancouver. Listen, we got a pair of teams that match up better than I think some people may think. Vancouver, they had a hell of a bounce-back season after posting their first losing record since season 13. This past season. They finished 9-3. They're number one in points scored, number one in points allowed, number one point differential. They nearly won the division if it wasn't for Washington. But speaking of bouncing back, how about Denver? They posted a losing record every season since season 17. Their 7-season playoff drought has also now come to an end. They finished 7-5, and they won the Central Division.
Right.
Got a title. For one of these teams, their bounce back ends tonight. When you start to compare these teams, you see a lot of similarities. There's strength of schedule, strength of victory, strength of defeat. They're all within a couple of ranks of each other. They're very similar how their seasons played out. They have various team stat averages that are split about 50-50 between the two of them on which team did better, either Denver or Vancouver. They're very evenly matched. Each is top 10 in numerous offensive categories and defensive categories, and both of these teams are number one in various categories ranked defensively. Both of these teams very good defensively. It is going to be a tough task for Denver playing on the road, but really I think this game could go either way. Talk about it.
Look, in Denver, right? I said this many times. The Jimmy Hatcher defensive scheme was on full display last week, and they nearly pitched a shutout. Bossier City scored really late to prevent the shutout, and it was something to quite watch. So it wasn't. I didn't overhype it. It lived up to what it was.
It did.
Look, and the run game for Denver was also pretty solid, right? By rushing for over 150 yards combined on the ground with Salmons and O'Shaughnessy, and they performed just well enough offensively to get enough points to win behind also stellar play from Logan Keel, who had 9 receptions for 100 yards as well. But the real story, like I said, is the defense for me, right? So this defense, it just showed last week, for those who didn't just know it before, why they were the number one defense, right? They shut down everything their opponent did best.
They did.
At all. They forced 4 turnovers. It was 3 interceptions. And they forced a fumble by that same person, the quarterback, Johnny Pickler. And they had constant pressure on the quarterback. We called that game. They only got 3 sacks, but they hit him so many times that game, having balls deflect out and everything else, right? The defense was also responsible for the only touchdown that Denver scored last week, right? They ended up getting a pick 6 from Parker Thomas, who's one of the best slot corners to ever play in the league.
Yep.
So, look, and they have so many contributors on the defense to even list, in my opinion, but they are a complete unit overall. And I do think their key players going into this week against Vancouver, because they're playing a really tough team, is going to be quarterback Trellis Blanton and how he plays and how he goes up against Logan Keel. And we know what the running backs can do, but they're going to have to be a little bit more balanced to make sure they do that. And the entire defensive unit and the scheme Hatsis is going to come out with, I do think that could decide whether they win or they lose.
100%, because they're going up against Vancouver, who could quite possibly be the best team in the SFL. They've had 9 wins on the season. All of them have been by 2 scores, and 2 of those were shutouts. So listen, Denver might have a great defense, but holy crap, are they going up against a great team?
And it don't matter how you slice it. That is amazing.
Yes.
All 9 wins by 2 scores. Like you said, 2 of those were shutouts. They are number 1 in nearly every offensive category and are the only team that averages over 400 yards of offense a game in the league. And that's impressive, I think. They're the only one that averages that much offense.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it almost doesn't matter how good your defense is. If you're going up against the best offense at putting up yards, you might slow them down, but can you slow them down enough?
Right, and quarterback Christian Brown, right? He's had a very, very good season as well. He's number 1 in completions and yards, and completion percentage all while throwing the ball to Hall of Famer Brett Killian, who was number 2 in receptions. He has 80, number 3 in yards. He's got 1,234 yards on the season, along with Nick Lockett. I believe he used to play for you guys as well. He also has 60 receptions with over 400 yards receiving as well. So they're throwing the ball all down the field, and collectively they have 8 touchdowns between the two of them. And also the run game is probably one of the most bruising bunch of runners that I've seen in the league already. Ike McBride at running back. Very, very big back dude. She just plows through everybody, doing great things. And the fullback, Mateo Bravado, actually leads the league in rushing.
I was going to say, it might say his position is fullback.
Leads the team in rushing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, they use him just like he's a running back.
It might say fullback, but, man, he plays just like – remember Brandon Jacobs back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
That's who he reminds me of.
Just murdering folks.
Yeah.
Look, and they have over 1,200 yards combined this season, 16 touchdowns. To me, they have a seemingly unstoppable type offense. If any defense can do it, I do think it's a Denver defense, but it's a lot to stop. You have a lot to kind of look at and try to figure out what you're going to do with it.
Speaking of defenses, if Denver has a shot at doing anything with Vancouver, their defense is going to have to step up, like you said, but their offense is going to have to beat the Denver defense. The Denver defense, they're not quite as good as the offense, but they are still extremely good.
Yeah, look, and they have the number 1 scoring defense.
Yeah.
In the league, only allowing 13 points a game.
That's pretty darn good.
And that's what Denver put up last week. So, like, hey, look, I don't know if it's going to be enough because they score a ton of points, right?
Yeah.
So, and look, and they are just behind Denver with the number 2 total defense. So they're not too far behind. Look. And then it's the thing. In my opinion, they do everything defensively than any other team in the league.
Yep.
They're number 1 in tackles for losses, takeaways, defensive touchdowns. Oh, and let's just say they're just a measly number 2 in sacks on the season with 30 and a half, right? Because they just had to not be 1 in something, right? So, and every defensive back has 4 or more interceptions.
It's amazing.
And this is the thing when I was actually looking at sort of analyzing the roster, 10 players. How many players do you have on the field at one time?
Only 11.
Only 11. 10 players on this defense have a sack.
Someone's slacking.
It's insane. It's insane to me. Really, look, and I mentioned, look, that they also have contributed. They also have the most defensive touchdowns in the league as well. Guess what they do? They have 6 pick sixes on the season.
Wow.
They're just doing everything that they can to do what they need to do. Every single member of this unit is a playmaker, and their key players are their quarterback Brown, wide receiver Killian, and everyone on the defense because they're all our playmakers.
Speaking of playmakers, it's time. Let's just get into it. We've got one game left to break down, but we're going to get into the All-Star reveal first, and then we'll save the breakdown for the game that we got coming up next. So, the way that All-Stars are decided now, it's not just drawing names out of a hat. It's not even a popularity contest. There is a metric that is applied to stats and just points that they put up, yards that they put up, picks that they got, sacks that they got, touchdowns, you name it. There's points assigned to things. There's different weights and scales depending on what category it is for what player. We can't get into the whole thing, but we can show you the list of players that got in. We'll start with the offense. And we'll get those up on the screen for you. Who jumps out at you? What do you see here on the offensive players? What do you like?
Right. There's a lot of guys who are plenty deserving here. I got to give the former Rev some props right now because we didn't have a whole lot when we were there. But look, Tommy Utah coming in right in there with an all-star nod for him. Well-deserved. He's a big reason why his team is 10-2 in these playoffs. Colin Hart as well. Look, he had a resurgence of a year this year, I think. He had a couple of down seasons, being more of a team player. But guess what? He come back in there and do his stuff. Ziggy Roenick, right? Coming from a team like Pittsburgh, right? He actually played for us last season. And Pittsburgh, right? Not a very good team, but he's still putting up the stats right there, right behind Kate Marion, right? And the way the scoring went. So, dude, there's a lot of people here that deserve a lot of recognition. We just don't have enough time to do it, but it's a really, really good list of people. Very, very talented group.
For sure. Kay Marion jumps out at me. I mean, what an amazing season for Kay Marion. We've got to go up against her this weekend. Not looking forward to seeing Kay in Estadio Matt Willson again. I was happy when we shoot her out the first time. She's back, ready for round 2. Gabriel Manning, of course, in the wide receiver list. He's a perennial guy. I think he's always there. Noe Terrazas making the All-Star game. Love to see it. What a phenomenal season he had. And Ray Bentley back in there as well, the Hall of Famer, just adding one more thing to his list of titles he's got. But Jordan Sipe, man, I mean, what a season. We asked Jordan Sipe to step into the shoes of the late great Matt Willson, and that's a tall task, man. That's a tall task, and we love him. And to see him listed there in the All-Stars, I love to see it.
He deserves. Look, and that's credit to your offensive scheme. Put him in position as an undersized quarterback at that. Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, defense. Let's get the defense up there, and I'm sure you probably want to mention Michaela Forker.
Yeah, look, I think it's all about the ladies here for me, right? That's what we got going on. Angela Meerkat, great season she had as a defensive end, right? Guess what else you got? You got Tina McGinn doing the same thing from the defensive tackle spot.
Yep.
And what do? You turn around. Let's go look at these cornerbacks. Michaela Forker, very, very well deserved by the ladies. The ladies get the love. They're the superheroes of the world.
There you go.
Congratulations to you ladies. Well deserved.
For me, the guy who jumps out at me the most here, I've always talked about him as the one who got away. Matthew Alvarado. Baby, come back. Matthew Alvarado, what a freaking season. Jason Peace, what a season. Those middle linebackers, Josh Farnsey, Nick Fargo, that middle linebacker group. What a group of 4 guys right there to go and get the nod in the middle linebacker position. I wish I could talk about them even more, but there's so many more players to get into. I mean, looking at the safeties, we got Max Jackson back in there. My guy Ben Charbs in as a strong safety. Listen, at LA Lycans, they did not have a good season. Ben Charbs, he sure did. We've even got some special teamers. Sammy Steele, Sonny J as the kickers. We got Vital Lee, Philip DeField as the punters. You see the kick returners. My guy, rookie Jared Dumas, making the All-Star game as a kick returner. Dave Axis, he's back in. Siege Falco, Bob Wood, Logan Keel, Kyle Finnemore as punt returners. What a great group. I wish we could talk about all these guys. Maybe we'll have some more time to get into a little more next week. Right now, we got one more game that we got to break out. The show must go on. Congratulations to everybody that made the All-Star roster this season. There's going to be a draft. There's going to be 2 people that are coaching, and those coaches are going to have a draft. Those coaches will pick from the players on the roster. They'll field 2 teams. There will be an All-Star game this offseason. We'll see those players on the field.
Congratulations to them.
Minnesota at Baltimore. We've got it coming up in just about 10 minutes' time. We got to get going. These are 2 teams that have never missed the playoffs as long as they've been teams. Never once. Minnesota.
That's unfair.
Right? They finished 7-5, and they were a 2-point loss away to Denver from winning the division. Again, an uncharacteristically rocky season for the Legend, but they punched their ticket to the wild card nonetheless. They'd take on Carolina on the road last week, and they handled them with ease. Sorry, Carolina, but they did. 27-6.
Carolina embarrassed me.
Pretty bad. Yeah, that was okay. I left. Baltimore, they posted their first 10-plus win total since season 19, when they would go on to win their 3rd straight championship that season. They just win everything.
Yep.
Their path to get here, though, was the 2nd easiest in the league. They have the worst strength of schedule of any team that made the playoffs this season. It was 2nd from the easiest. What does that mean? Does that mean they're bad? No. Does it mean that they're beatable? Yes, it does, because there's teams that did beat them, 2 of them, in fact, and those teams both have losing records, man. I mean,
that's laughable.
I can't help it. No disrespect. I'm just saying, man, you win everything except for 2 teams. They have a losing record. This game will be a rematch from way back in week 3. Minnesota visited Baltimore. Baltimore stuck it to them. They won 31-3. Will that happen again, or is Minnesota going to continue their advance through the playoffs?
Look, Minnesota destroyed Carolina in the second half, in my opinion, last week.
Oh, yeah.
What did they do? They shut them out 21-0 in the second half and ultimately end up winning 27-6. They look like the Minnesota team that we have come to know over the past few seasons.
The one we've been waiting for all season.
Right, and that's and if this is where they're peaking at the right time.
Yep.
Look, and the offense got off to a slow start, right, but they picked it up in the second half, as I mentioned, right, and the defense shut down Carolina and forced turnovers, which was 4 of them. this was the type of game that we're used to seeing them. Ball control offense, smothering type defense, right? And quarterback Johnny Reno played really, really well, even though he threw 2 interceptions, but he was able to keep himself composed and make the necessary plays. The run game for me, though, for them, was a bit worrisome. They only averaged 2.5 yards a carry.
With Colin Hart.
Yeah, with Colin Hart, who had a really, really good season, and Isaac Knox. But they overcame some of that with the connection of Johnny Reno and Jay Taylor, which was very good. Jay Taylor had 9 receptions, 183 yards, 2 touchdowns to go
if
with
there
it.
was an offensive player spotlight, Jay Taylor. There you go. Now you at least know who our picks were.
Look, and what they did, they lost to Baltimore in Week 3 a long time ago.
Yep.
As you mentioned before. So they will need a similar performance from the offense, but
from last week,
but with a better performance from their defense to be able to slow down the league, one of the league's best offenses. They will also need to apply more pressure on the quarterback, which they didn't have last week.
Yep.
Right? In my opinion, that's what they're going to need to be the best of Baltimore offense like they have. They allowed 42% on third downs, which is 3rd best in the league. And I do think their key players this week is going to be Colin Hart, getting him going. You can't have 2.5 yards of carry and expect to win against a team like Baltimore.
Right.
Reno needs to maybe limit his turnovers like he did from last week, but still have the production he had. And I do think the defensive end and Meerkat and Mark Mello, and as you mentioned, Matthew Alvarado, they're going to need to come here as that front 7 type area to be able to dominate that line of scrimmage and maybe force Baltimore in a situation they don't want to be in.
I didn't memorize the whole all-star list, but your key players, you named at least 3 of them. So I mean, they got a stacked roster. They've got a roster that can compete with 10-2 Baltimore. They are the hottest team in the SFL. We talked about Vancouver being really good, but man, Baltimore, they are right up there.
8 straight wins, but 5 of the 8 games during that 8 straight wins, they won by 1 score, right? So I really do think, in my opinion, I know a lot of people may differ, it says a lot about a team when they're able to play games really close and actually win those games, right? It just shows that they don't panic in all these stressful moments. They're able to still come out, compete, and execute at a really high level. So I do think that that's important, even though the strength of schedule was not what everybody expected to be, and losing to 2 teams with losing records, that just seems
But
weird.
ultimately, we did misspeak earlier. We said Washington was the number 1 seed. Baltimore, they are the number 1 seed.
So and top 7 in every offensive category, and have the 2nd fewest turnovers in the SFL.
Yep.
Quarterback Jack Wigmore, former MVP, is number 3 in touchdowns, number 2 QBR, and has the 2nd fewest interceptions thrown behind your boy, right? So protecting the ball
All-star.
has been key for this offense's success. For them to be success, they have had 0 fumbles from their running back group.
Yeah.
None. I don't know if any other team can say that, but
Not
guess
us.
what? They haven't had any fumbles. Warren Murray, 4th in rush yards, has been his usual self with averaging 4.5 yards a carry. Their pass catchers have been great as well, and this is something that I don't even know a lot of people realize, is that they have 3 pass catchers with over 600 receiving yards.
Crazy.
Benji Matson, 6'10". Mac Chima, 738.
Mac and cheese.
Ivory Irvin, 1,039 yards receiving. All of those combined for 15 touchdowns. It's crazy, right? Now, look, if a defense shuts down one of them, guess what? They have
2 left.
2 more. They have plenty of playmakers to go around that can hurt and kill them. Just an all-around great offense, and we're going to see how that Minnesota defense is going to handle them.
And a lot of times when we're talking about these teams, we say, hey, the offense is really good. The defense, not quite as much, or vice versa. It's not a great offense, but it's a great defense. This is a great offense. It's a great defense, too. They're every bit as good statistically as the offense.
Yeah, and guess what? And they allow 17 points a game to their opponents, which is 4th best, while forcing a lot of turnovers. 25 turnovers they forced throughout the season.
Top 5.
5th best in the league. They have, in my opinion, a lot of people don't talk about this stuff, but I am.
You do like talking.
In my opinion, the best 2 defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, and defensive tackles, Ralph Leopold and Nate Brown.
Yep.
These 2 can dictate the line of scrimmage and dominate offensive guards and tackles along with the center of the opposing team. And this, in my opinion, has allowed their 2nd and 3rd level defenders to read, react, and make the game-changing plays that they have done over the course of the season, right? They may not have all these gaudy stats, but they're extremely talented up front, and they dominate the interior of that line. If you have pressure coming right in the middle, you run yourself into bad situations.
All right, who's your key players for Baltimore?
Ivory Irvin, wide receiver. Mac Chima, wide receiver. Benjamin Madison as well. And those two interior defensive linemen, Leopold and Brown.
I can't wait. And we're only a few minutes away from getting this game started. It's going to be a wild weekend of playoff football. Not wild card, but it'll be a wild weekend nonetheless.
Sure will.
Quarterfinal football coming up in just minutes. Let's get into our picks. I am 84-55. I made up a little bit of ground on you. You're 85-54. We went 1 and 2 each. You picked Albuquerque, Houston, Carolina. I picked Sin City, Houston, Minnesota. Of course, Albuquerque, Fort Worth, and Minnesota. They got those wins. 139 picks down, only 7 picks left. We've got Minnesota at Baltimore. Who do you got?
I'm going with Baltimore. Why? Because of everything I just got finished saying. I do think they're going to be a team that's just going to take it and they're just going to kind of run with it. I think Minnesota's still trying to figure it out, but if they can put it together, they might have a chance, but I think Baltimore wins it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go with Baltimore as well. I think Minnesota has a chance. They played really well on the road last week, but it was against a much statistically lesser opponent. Baltimore, they play really good at home. They're at home. They're firing on all cylinders. We'll see what happens, but I'm picking Baltimore. Got Denver at Vancouver.
And this is one I think has the potential to even be like a defensive battle, right? And that somebody's going to have to merge late. And I don't think it's going to be Denver. I think it's going to be Vancouver. Why? They have the firepower on offense and the defense to shut down the opponent. The defenses might trade blows early on, but I think Vancouver's offense is what's going to be an ultimate decider.
Yeah, and I talked about it during your breakdown too. The teams I think are a lot more evenly matched than people would think because Vancouver has played really, really well, and people have questioned, including wide receiver Brett Solberg, who's over on the streets are talking. He's been talking about Denver. The streets and Brett have been talking about Denver all season long. Now they face off in the quarterfinals. But I think Brett's going to get the upper hand. I think Vancouver is going to get the win. I'm going with Vancouver. Albuquerque, Mexico City.
This one, in my opinion, it was easy for me to pick because Mexico City is home, undefeated. They just played Albuquerque just recently. I think Albuquerque might be really trying to figure out, what they can do better because they didn't have a good performance last week, in my opinion.
They did not.
Mexico City is prepared for them. Mexico City also has a week's worth of film on what they did.
Yes.
So we're going to see how it's going to shake out, but I'm pretty sure Mexico City is going to come out on top by 2 scores.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm obviously picking Mexico City because, Mexico City. So I'll just leave it at that, but I'm looking forward to the game. Listen, we're certainly not phoning it in on Albuquerque. It's going to be a tough opponent. I don't know about this 2 scores. I like what you're saying, 2 scores. I like that, but I don't know. We'll see. I am going to pick the Aztecs. Fort Worth at Washington.
I'll make it quick and easy.
Okay.
Bulls on parade.
Wow.
The Toros are going to go into Washington and win this game. Don't let me down. There have been giant killers all season.
They have.
Winning, and then what they did, they proved it last week. They're going to continue to do it. Washington is going to go down.
Man, I went back and forth on this one, and for a little while there, I had Fort Worth plugged into that spot. And I want them to win, honestly, because you want to know why? I want to face them in the championship. That's what I want. I want my Toros rematch, and I want it in the championship. 1 game at a time, okay? So I'm going to go with Washington, though. I think Washington, they're playing at home. They've been playing really good. They've only lost to 2 teams. One of them was Fort Worth, but we'll see what happens. I'm picking Washington in that one. It's all the time that we've got. We've got Minnesota at Baltimore coming up in just a couple minutes. Thanks for joining us for the quarterfinal show. We will be back in the semifinal show. We'll talk about how those 4 teams got there and everything else that we can possibly think of, and hopefully throw in a couple player spotlights. I'm Mike. This is Gerald. This has been the Matt Willson SFL Kickoff Show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you at the game. Stay with us.